and it's 1 p.m. So thank you everybody for joining the Condo Project Warrant webinar today. Couple of items of cleanup before we launch into this webinar. I'm Orest Tomaselli. I'm the president of Project Review at CondoTek. And we're going to run down a couple of different products that we offer at CondoTek today. First things first, if you have any questions throughout the webinar at any point in time, please utilize the Q&A feature and type your question in. We try and leave 5 minutes at the end in order for you to be able to, for us to answer those questions. It's important to know that this webinar in its entirety, a recording of it will be available on our blog and it'll be posted by tomorrow. We are going to have a couple of future webinars regarding industry issues, specifically insurance issues, and how those are impacting the marketplace. We're going to outline some of them today, but we're also going to run a webinar shortly on our lending compliance report product, which I'll delve into a little bit today. It's been met with, kind of resounding applause in the industry from property managers and from condominium boards, and attorneys who are representing purchasers in condominium properties who are starting to utilize the product as well. So it's an interesting product. I've done a webinar on it before, but there's a new iteration of it, so to speak. What we're trying to do is really hone in on the issues that are being presented to condominium associations regarding critical repairs, budgets, and issues like that. So we'll delve into that a little bit today. So without further ado, let's jump into this. Our Condo Project Warrant product, right? It's kind of an amazing solution for the industry. It is primarily utilized by lenders who want to do loans in condominium developments, but either don't have the experience in reviewing condominium projects, don't have the staff to do so, or have the staff and have issues on properties that they want us to review and us to take a look at. And the latter happens a lot where, we'll have a large lender who has, a deep staff of condominium reviewers that will review a condominium property and decide that they really don't want to make the call, that they want an expert opinion on that particular property, and they'll order a Condo Project Warrant from us. You can order the Condo Project Warrant in various different ways. It's very simple to do so. You can either order it directly through most LOS systems. Of course, Encompass is kind of the king of the industry. There's a way to order directly through Encompass. And you can order directly through our portal once you get signed up. So an easy way for lenders to order the product. And, there's a standardized billing for this product. We charge $695 for a Condo Project Warrant, but that $695 includes all aspects of document collection as well. So if there's a cost for the questionnaire or if there's a cost for additional financial documents, those are all encompassed within that $695. There's no additional fee to our lender clients. And that's become really valuable, especially as prices have increased in the industry dramatically for condominium questionnaires and associated documents that need to be reviewed by lenders for condominium project approval. We complete these Condo Project Warrants as quickly as possible. We like to say internally that everything's a rush, right? And it is, and we operate in that fashion. On average, it takes approximately about 5 days to collect documents from the various stakeholders in the industry. And after that, it takes, the appropriate amount of time for us to review all the different aspects of a condominium property. So on average, it's about 12 days from order to decision on a Condo Project Warrant. And I say on average because there are certain situations where As you probably know, it's very difficult to get uh, an insurance policy or a questionnaire completed accurately, or financial documents or engineering documents, reserve studies or engineering reports on particular properties based upon some sort of catalyst in the review process that we need. And sometimes associations are, slow in providing that information. It's starting to get a little bit better, and properties across the country are kind of being looked at and evaluated, and there are some resources now, even in our organization, where we've already done a review on a project recently, and another lender will place an order on it. So, dependent upon the site, it's either, a very quick process, and often it is, or sometimes it takes a couple of extra days to collect all that documentation for review. But on average, again, it's about 12 days to collect all the documentation and provide a review, which is, of course, a fully warranted project review. We provide these warranted decisions for lenders with this product, and we provide a life of loan guarantee on that warrant. So this product in the industry is unbelievably well utilized. And we have over 700 lenders across the United States utilizing our services, and a lot of them placing orders for this condo project warrant product. So, what are our services? And the reason I wanted to hold this webinar is to outline a couple of different things. And so you can place the appropriate order. Because we're kind of deep now, um, where we not only provide our legacy product, which is the Condo Pack, which is documents and data on condominium projects, which most lenders utilize right now, where we deliver an entire set of documents and questionnaires on a particular condominium association to our lender clients, typically within an average of about 5 days from order. That Condo Pack product is really, really popular. The Condo Project Warrant product is really, really popular for lenders who want to, have us review the entire project and provide a warrant on it, so that there really is no risk for them in closing a loan. From the project perspective, obviously they have to do a complete underwrite on the borrower, but from a warranting of a project perspective, if we warrant a project, we guarantee it. We also offer a co-op project warrant. And this is an interesting service because there are a lot of cooperatives across the United States. Yes, they're localized in, very specific states and cities. But we've been asked several times to provide, a co-op project warrant product, and we do a pretty great job of evaluating a cooperative project as well. We do, and those are primarily our lender services. We do offer a bunch of services for condominium associations. This lending compliance report product, which I'll delve into in a minute or two, has really been very successful. And we launched it as a pilot product a couple of months ago. And the industry is responding in a very strong fashion. We have property managers, attorneys, again, we have condominium associations contacting us directly. And that's sometimes as a result of issues they've found, where lenders have rejected loans within those specific properties. Sometimes it's because they've received a unavailable for lending designation from one or both of the agencies. And sometimes when we do this review on an association, it leads to a second step. Sometimes that's a submission to Fannie Mae for a PERS approval or an FHA project approval, or sometimes a portfolio project approval through various lenders across the country who will provide either portfolio lending in a property that's not compliant, and or non-QM type of mortgage financing within that site. And every once in a while we get a request for a VA project approval, depending upon where the property is in the country and whether or not VA loans are offered in that particular state. We also have a pretty robust developer team where we provide Fannie Mae PERS project approvals, FHA project approvals, portfolio project approvals, VA project approval, and questionnaire completion services for new construction condominium developments across the United States. And that has been really successful because not only do we find that developers, sometimes aren't up to date on what the new requirements are for residential lending across the United States, but often they fall into a trap of not being able to close units until 50% of the development is in contract to owner occupied or second home purchasers, or Fannie Mae's guidelines or Freddie Mac's guidelines, but there are other available loan products for new construction developments across the country. And often we do a portfolio project approval for our developer clients along with a Fannie Mae project approval or FHA project approval so that developers can access residential mortgage financing at the very earliest stages of pre-sale, sometimes as low as 15% pre-sale. And that questionnaire completion service has been really interesting as well because we've been asked by developers for many years to kind of launch that service where we would, since we had all the data and documents, that we would complete the questionnaires and send it to them for execution prior to sending it to a lender who is seeking it. And that has been something we've launched very successfully on lots of new construction developments across the country. So just an outline of what those services are and who orders what at what point in time. So condo project warrant, to delve into this a little bit deeper. So I want to give you some data about what we're seeing in the industry and what we're finding with our review. So, we utilize our data automation. We have a proprietary validation system, essentially, where we validate the data that we receive, and we review that data through through our data automation and proprietary validation systems. So we often have very, very good information on condominium properties across the country, not only because we seek data through several different sources, whether it's public data or private data on specific condominium properties, but we usually get to kind of like the crux of the issue relatively quickly on whether or not a property is compliant or not compliant. So we complete an entire review through the CPW product of the insurance policy, the operating budget, the operational documents, any litigation that might exist on a property. We look at the reserve studies, we look at the engineering reports, and we look at, of course, critical repairs, deferred maintenance, all of the hot button issues that currently exist and are causing some difficulty in closing loans through the agencies for condominiums. So let's delve into it. I mean, what are the biggest issues that we're seeing out there right now? And, by and large, it's insurance, right? So when we do an insurance review, we collect the entire insurance policy and we review that policy for, all of the, triggers that cause a policy not to be compliant, whether or not their deductible is, more than 5% on a policy, or if, the policy has replacement cost, or the policy has inflation guard, or, ACV, or any of the other issues that are currently plaguing the insurance world. And the problem we're finding, of course, is that, with the surging cost of insurance out there, across the country, and I think the numbers are anywhere from 30 to 300% higher for policies, dependent upon where the property is, whether or not it's near the water or whether it's not. There are massively increased costs for property insurance for condominiums, for insurance policies for condominium associations. Along with the increased cost is the availability of an insurance policy in certain states. There has been, some difficulty in obtaining a policy from, in states for condominium properties in states like California or Florida as a result of floods or hurricanes or wildfires, or the costs that, or the claims that were paid over the last several years as a result of those, acts of God, so to speak. So it's important to note that, we really pay very close attention to what's going on in the industry, and what the agencies want as far as their review is concerned, and what they want for insurance policies. And we pay very close attention to which condominium properties are being designated as unavailable for lending and why. So if you look at the data from January till today, in January, there were about 300 condominium properties across the United States that had a unavailable for lending designation as a result of insurance issues. Today, there are over 1,000 condominium developments that have an unavailable for lending designation as a result specifically of their insurance policy not being compliant. So this is by far the biggest issue in the industry right now. And we do an incredibly comprehensive review on the insurance policy for a condominium development. We also review the budget. We're finding that a lot of properties don't have a 10% line item for reserve. And moreover, even if they don't have a 10% line item for reserve, they don't have a reserve study to show that they need less than a 10% line item for reserve, or that they're collecting less. And that's something that's starting to become more and more prominent. And we think it's as a result, I mean, if I were to guess, there's a lot of additional costs that are coming up for these condominium associations, and some of the associations just aren't setting aside this 10% or aren't getting reserve studies. And it's a problem. We see a lot of properties that, just aren't there. Within this condo project warrant review, we actually, outline not only the issue, whether or not they have 10% or don't have 10%, but we also outline the possibility for them to go out and get a reserve study, because we see, the balance in their reserve account might be $2 or $3 million, but they have less than a 10% line item. I mean, that happens from time to time. But we actually make recommendations within this condo project warrant for compliance. So that's a pretty unique thing in the industry as well. Operational documents, we're looking for the norm non-compliance issues that exist out there. Whether or not, the property is compliant with, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac's notification provision requirements, dependent upon if it's an existing property or a new construction property. That's something we look at very regularly. And then we really delve into litigation issues. So on litigation issues, not only do we outline and look at what the issue is or what the litigation is, but we also provide the request for how to solve the litigation issue. So if it's a letter from the insurer, we request that. We actually go directly to the insurer sometimes and request that. But we try and solve the problems before they get back to the lender, in order to provide a warrantable review back to that lender. And then we do a big review right now of the reserve study, that if it's available on a property, and the engineering report, if it's available. Now, it should be said that reserve studies are becoming more popular, right? There are states now requiring reserve studies be performed on condominium properties, like Florida, after the tragic Surfside event, now has a mandatory reserve study requirement. And most recently, the state of New Jersey has a mandatory reserve study requirement. What's interesting about that is we're finding out a lot more data about these properties, as it relates to critical repairs, structural condition, mechanical condition. If the report does exist, it has to be reviewed, right? The same with an engineering report. And often we find that, I'd say probably it's 50-50, where the reserve study is very, very helpful in providing a warrant to the project. And sometimes the reserve study outlines a major issue that that hasn't been completed, whether it's a critical repair or some sort of deferred maintenance or some sort of structural or mechanical issue to the property, I'll tell you that it's been interesting for us because the reserve study has been incredibly helpful in some situations and has often led down the path of noncompliance too, but it's very clear. So our review of that is intense, as is our review of the engineering report. So all in, the condo project warrant product for lenders has been very successful, and often we get a lot of lenders send us their reviews after their properties after they've reviewed them internally, so they can push them towards their portfolio lending because they know, or they want a second review on a project because they know it's not warrantable. So important to note about that particular product. We also started offering, a couple months ago, this lending compliance report, which we, refer to as the LCR. What's interesting about this product is I was shocked that it didn't exist. It didn't exist in the industry. So let me tell you what happens regularly. Uh, somebody will want to purchase a unit in a condominium development or refinance their unit in a condominium development, and they'll go to a bank, and the bank will request all the documents, do a review on that particular property, and go back and say that the property is not compliant with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac lending guidelines, whatever it may be, and they'll outline a specific issue, why it's not compliant. But often there are many other issues in that property that would prevent unit owners or borrowers from getting residential mortgage financing. So the whole picture is never really painted for an association, and that information gets communicated back to a property manager sometimes, and sometimes directly to a board member. And often they're at a loss. They're like, well, our insurance isn't compliant, but our insurance hasn't changed in 10 years, where we just got this new insurance policy and everything's the same, or why isn't it compliant? And it causes an unimaginable amount of strife for not only board members, but for property management groups. And one of our biggest proponents of this product has been property managers across the country. The product is specifically for condominium boards, property managers, attorneys, and sometimes purchasers will ask us to review a project as well before they actually make a purchase, either through their attorney or sometimes even directly they'll contact us. But our report outlines completely if the property is Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac compliant, and we outline if it's not, or even if it is, whether or not portfolio lending compliance if that property is compliant with portfolio lenders out there, and what type of resources exist for that association and for borrowers within that property. So it also, within the scope of all of that review, and the reason why I wanted to put both the condo project warrant product and the LCR up here, lending compliance report, is because they're ordered by different people, right? The condo project warrant is ordered by lenders, and the lending compliance report is ordered by boards and managers and attorneys and purchasers. But the difference between the two products is that we really spend an enormous time in making this report back to the board detailed as possible, with the language that, let's call them civilians understand, right? People who don't have a lot of experience in reviewing condominium properties. And we outline what the issues are and provide what the solutions are to those issues within this report. So we've had a couple of boards, thank us profusely afterwards, because what we typically do is we have them send us all their documents, we do the review, we complete the report, we send it back to them, whether it's compliant or not compliant. And then we often have a call with the board and management. And within that call, we explain what's not compliant about that particular property. And it's funny because I love doing these calls. Some of my staff does them sometimes, but I love actually having these direct calls with the boards, because what we find out, and what I found out, is that they're often not provided with enough information in order to make the property compliant. Now, some of the stuff that we find is, you know, pretty tough to comply to get compliant. Some of the stuff we find is, you know, deferred maintenance, $3 million in deferred maintenance that they can't have completed and, for the next, year because they need some sort of permit from their, state or local municipality. And we find, what those issues are. And I think what's most important to them is they actually have the timeline to understand when their property is eventually going to be compliant and what they need to do to get there. So we've had a lot of boards where they've said, oh, now we can tell purchasers, they can only go for portfolio mortgage financing or non-QM mortgage financing on this property, and not to even seek Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac mortgage financing until we fix these issues. So as a result of that, what's been really interesting for us is that we have originators across the country pushing these reviews to us. So essentially as an incubator for future lending for them. And we were shocked at that kind of, additional benefit that this product provides. But a lot of lenders are utilizing this lending compliance report to get a board to understand what all the issues are, and then even in some instances, help them to get past some of the issues. This report sometimes results in a Fannie Mae PERS application, an FHA project approval application, a portfolio approval application, dependent upon what the result of it is, right? And what we're finding is that, because we provide such an in-depth review and the cost is such that it is as low cost as possible for what these associations get. It's $995 fee for the report. We're finding that a lot of these associations are not only doing it once, but doing it twice or three times because documents expire after 90 days, right? And the report expires after 90 days or when the documents expire, depending upon what that date is. Some things have to be re-reviewed. Some of our clients are, begging us to do an every 90-day review of the site. So it's been really successful, but I wanted everybody to understand the differences between the two products. That being said, I always like to leave a minute or two for questions. Here's our contact information. Should you want any information about any of the products, you can email us or call us, and you can place an order directly through sales@CondoTek.com. And I'd love to answer any questions. So Melinda, are there any questions? It's so hard for me to do both, to present and to read the questions, and sometimes I miss some. Do we have
Thank
any?
you, Orest. We do have a few questions. Rick asked, so the lending compliance report is only good for 90 days and then it expires?
That's correct. It depends on what the expiration of the documents are, but the industry standard is 90 days, right? That doesn't mean that the if the association gets a clear report that they're compliant with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac lending guidelines, it's not often that they'll go back 90 days later and get an updated lending compliance report, because why would they need it? But if they're not compliant and they want to come back to us and have us re-review, that initial review and initial report is good for 90 days, and then they'd have to pay an additional fee for another review.
Our next question, do you offer assistance with getting spot approvals with FHA?
We do. So when you submit for a condo project warrant, there is also an FHA project review as well through that process. You can order an FHA project review, and you could get a spot approval based upon that review. Yeah. Anything else out there?
Joe asked if we can share a sample lending compliance report for
Sure
FHA.
can. Yeah, sure can. Happy to do it. For FHA, I don't know if I have a sample for FHA. We have a sample for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. and for portfolio. But we have a lending compliance report sample that we can certainly send to you so you can review it. All you have to do is send an email out and we'll follow up with you based upon your request. But if you wanted to, you could send an email to sales@CondoTek or Orest@CondoTek.com and happy to get that over to you.
Kevin asked, how do we find out if a property is on the do not lend list?
Aha. Well, technically, you have to be a Fannie Mae seller servicer to access CPM to access that do not lend list. Um, Fannie Mae is creating a process for an association to make that request directly. I just came back from a roundtable with the Mortgage Bankers Association in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, where the representatives from Fannie and Freddie were there. And this was a question that came up there as well. Both agencies, I think, recognize that, there are, that people want to know, that associations want to know if their property is on this, it's on a list, essentially has an unavailable designation, right? And Fannie Mae is putting something into place where I think the notification is going to come out in September or October, where there will be a way for an association to find out if they are on the list. Freddie Mac currently has that available, where an association can contact them directly. But you have to be a Fannie Mae seller servicer as of today, or a Freddie Mac seller servicer in order to access their repository.
I believe that's all for questions.
All right. So look, we like to try and keep these webinars, efficiently done. We try to do them as efficiently as possible and keep them on time. So we've had a half hour. Thank you very much for attending. Any additional questions, we're happy to answer. And hopefully we provided some sort of value for you today, so you can understand not only what services we offer, but what the current issues are within the industry, as it relates to condominium or cooperative lending. So thanks for attending, and hopefully you'll be on our next webinar where we'll go into detail about the lending compliance report. Thank you.